Home and Away returned from its Christmas break in January after going on Christmas break way back in November. Back in November, Home and Away went to its break in first place in my rankings for November 2022. It comes back in January in third place, but it was still a breath of fresh air to have Home and Away back in rotation for these rankings, because I do enjoy Home and Away, and so many of these other soap operas lately I have just not been enjoying at all. I said in one of my other videos for the month of soap operas that basically the bottom 5 are all really bad, like really bad, and then there's a gap with Coronation Street and Hollyoaks that are at least a little better than the bottom 5. But my top 3 are just so much more enjoyable than the other 7 soap operas in my rankings. I find my top 3 to be above and beyond the other 7 for the last several months now, and it's not really changing lately. Home and Away comes back off of their story where the brakes were cut as Felicity was driving to her wedding to Tane. Eden, her friend, also in the car with her. The car goes off the rails, crashes, it catches on fire. They are saved, at least. The accident also involved Leah, who was hurt, and at first they were blaming Leah's husband Justin for the brakes going out in the car, even though it's later found out that they were actually cut. And Cash finds out that it was probably having to do with him, so he's feeling really guilty about it since he thinks the brakes were cut because of him. He's this police officer. He has a lot of enemies. And of course, he's had this budding relationship with Eden that I don't really like, that budding relationship at all. I've talked about that in the past. That relationship doesn't have good chemistry. I don't think. I preferred Rose and Cass, but they seem to be off of that now. But Eden was in really bad shape after the accident, so that is why Cash is really feeling guilty about it, that this involved him. So he wants to find out the truth about who did this. So most of the month of January for the return of Home and Away is Cash trying to figure out who really did this. And on the other side of things, Felicity's having PTSD from the accident. And there's kind of issues between her and Cash as brother and sister as well. But they always have those on and off problems. But it turns out it's an old gang called the Bikies, one of these gangs on the show that Cash has had a problem with as a police officer. They end up kidnapping Cash, but Tanya sees it happening and gets the police on it. Cash ends up okay in the end, and Eden also wakes up from her coma, but then they go the route of Eden doesn't remember Cash, even though she remembers almost everything else, but somehow doesn't remember Cash or her relationship with Cash. She remembers who Cash is, but has blocked out the relationship with Cash. Maybe that's a sign that the pairing doesn't work. If that's the route they have to go to create tension for them, is a really poorly written obstacle of Eden doesn't remember Cash but remembers everything else. Not a fan of that coupling at all. But a coupling I do like, and another kind of climax we got where they left off from their break, with Bree being kidnapped by her abusive husband. She ends up having to kill him in self-defense. Of course, Bree having a hard time after that. Rose befriends her. Of course, the big part of this for me has been the developing relationship between Remi and Bree. I really like this couple, especially to say that I didn't even like the character of Remi not that long ago. Just about probably 5 months ago, I did not like the character of Remi at all. I thought he was the worst addition of all the new characters on Home and Away after COVID. But the actor is really good. And the actor has sold me on this pairing. The chemistry is there. The way he looks at her is really what sells me on it. But of course, Bree is now pushing him away because A, she feels guilty about killing her husband even though he was abusive. But also, she probably needs a break from relationships after being in that abusive marriage for so long. But this couple has it, I think. I think Remi and Bree, especially for being new characters on a soap opera, I've really come around to enjoying them a lot and rooting for them to be together. they also don't have the trope that they're doing with Eden to create tension between Eden and Cash. They have a legitimate reason for Bree to want to push Remi away with her PTSD, with her getting out of an abusive relationship, not ready for a new relationship. So Bree avoiding Remi makes a lot of sense, and it creates more tension for them as a couple. And I also don't have to wait a year and a half like a certain couple on General Hospital on the American soap operas, where they just stretch it out way too long. And I don't have to deal with some poor decision making on some of the other American soap operas where their couples are concerned. I can enjoy Remi and Bree just having realistic writing, but also having that chemistry and not being kept apart for trope reasons or for badly written reasons. They're being kept apart for real reasons to create tension, and the tension is working for me. I really enjoy the couple, and I hope they stay being written well. Some other stories on Home and Away. Theo, who of course is part of the band story that they've been doing on Home and Away, seems to have a stalker. At least that's what Kirby thinks, because Theo gets some fan art. But nobody should know where to send the fan art, and yet this stalker seems to know where to find it, or where to send it, I mean. So I see that could get really interesting. Home and Away does pretty good with stalker stories, or just with over-the-top villain characters. So I look forward to seeing where that goes. I think it could be an entertaining story. Ziggy gave birth to her and Dean's baby, which is a big mark for that couple. And Mackenzie's like recoupling with an old character, I guess, named Gabe, who they have a past together, and they're mixing business with pleasure now. The Xander and Stacy story, I was okay. Rose had been questioning Stacy's motives with her brother, because Rose and Xander are so close as brother and sister. They have that close relationship. But Stacy seemed to be proving herself that she really wanted this relationship with Xander. She was moving on from her, I want to say low-key, slutty ways of just dating a bunch of people at once. But then she's doing this workout class, and this guy keeps hitting on her, and she seems to give in to him, and they make out in a car. And of course, Rose is a police officer, sees people making out in a car, sees it's them, gives Stacy the opportunity to tell Xander the truth, but she doesn't, so Rose has to tell her brother. Xander, of course, feels dumb for trusting her in the first place, and finally breaks up with her. It was okay, but what I need more from this story, I need two things from this story. A, I need Xander to finally just grow a real backbone. I mean, he broke up with Stacy, but they continue to write Xander as like this puppy dog character that we're supposed to feel so sorry for, because he's just so unlucky in love. But he mostly comes off as way too pathetic most of the time. I hope we get some character growth with him. But more importantly, I hope we get a real story for Rose. I really like the character of Rose, but she hasn't been involved in her own story for several months now, after her and Cash became not a thing anymore. So Rose is just involved as a busybody, as a cop most of the time, or involved in Xander's love life. Get Rose a real story of her own. I need that to happen sooner rather than later. I'm going to get annoyed with Home and Away. But for now, I still enjoy Home and Away as one of my top 3 soap operas. It's in 3rd place, however, in its return to 2023.